It was another early morning on the Navy ship, and the sun had just begun to rise over the calm waters. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, reflecting on the waves as the ship quietly cut through the ocean. The crew was already awake, moving with the precision of practiced routines. Some were checking equipment, others were adjusting ropes and lines, while a few sat quietly sipping their coffee, enjoying the rare calm before a day filled with drills and exercises. There was a sense of order, discipline, and focus, as always, aboard a ship where every action mattered and mistakes could be costly. Among the crew, there was one person who stood out, though she didn't make herself noticeable on purpose. She walked through the deck with a confident but quiet stride, her uniform crisp and flawless. Her name was known to only a few on the ship, and most sailors assumed she was just another officer on routine duty. But in reality, she carried a background that was far from ordinary. Years of specialized training, countless hours in covert operations, and skills that only a select few possessed made her far more than she appeared. Yet, she didn't flaunt her abilities. She understood the importance of blending in, of letting the ship operate smoothly without unnecessary attention. The morning air was filled with the usual sounds of naval life, the distant hum of engines, the clanging of metal from maintenance work, and the occasional shout of orders from the deck. Despite the calm appearance, there was always an underlying tension aboard a Navy vessel. Every sailor knew that at any moment, they could face unexpected challenges, from sudden storms to emergency drills, or even real threats. It was this mix of calm and potential danger that shaped life at sea. Among those walking across the deck was a Navy SEAL, a seasoned soldier with a reputation for skill, courage, and occasionally a mischievous sense of humor. He had been part of countless missions, had seen things most people couldn't imagine, and yet, on this morning, he was in a playful mood. He enjoyed teasing new officers, breaking the strict monotony with small jokes and laughter. It was his way of lightening the atmosphere, though it sometimes made people uneasy, unsure where the line between humor and respect lay. The SEAL spotted her, the female officer, and something about her calm, confident presence caught his attention. He decided to make his usual playful move. With a grin and a slightly teasing tone, he called out to her, asking her rank as if it were just a casual joke. The question was meant to be lighthearted, to spark a little laughter among the crew. Some of the sailors nearby chuckled quietly, thinking it was just another friendly moment on the ship. The officer, however, did not respond immediately. She turned slowly, her eyes calm and observant, giving nothing away. The SEAL's grin faltered slightly as he realized she wasn't reacting like the others might. There was a subtle air of authority around her, an unspoken presence that demanded attention without making noise. For a brief moment, the playful banter faded, replaced by a quiet curiosity. What was she thinking? Why wasn't she laughing or responding like everyone else? The captain of the ship, standing a little distance away, noticed the interaction as well. At first, he thought it was just another routine joke, something that happened frequently among the crew. But then he saw her eyes, steady and unwavering, and something about her posture made him pause. There was a hint of something unusual, a sense that this was not just a simple exchange of words. The captain's instincts, honed over years of service, told him that this woman carried more than just a rank on paper. There was a depth, a seriousness that demanded attention. As the morning moved forward, the ship continued its steady course. Sailors went about their duties, unaware that a subtle but important event was unfolding on deck. The SEAL, slightly uneasy now, waited for a response, realizing that his joke might not be taken in the way he intended. Meanwhile, the officer remained calm, her mind focused, assessing the situation quietly. She understood the importance of timing, of knowing when and how to reveal her knowledge and skills. Every gesture, every word had weight, and she measured hers carefully. The tension was invisible but palpable. While the day seemed ordinary to anyone watching from a distance, those involved could sense that something was about to shift. Life at sea was full of routines, drills, and camaraderie, but it also required constant vigilance. A single moment, a single word, could change the course of events, especially when dealing with those trained in intelligence and covert operations. By the time the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting bright light across the deck, the crew had returned to their tasks, and the brief interaction was over, at least on the surface. But the stage had been set for something far more serious, something that would soon reveal itself in a way no one aboard had anticipated. What began as a playful question on a calm morning was about to turn into an unforgettable event, one that would test courage, secrecy, and the hidden layers of life in the Navy. The playful morning banter had barely begun when the Navy SEAL, with a grin still on his face, decided to take his joke a little further. He stepped closer to the female officer, his tone light and teasing, and asked her again about her rank, this time louder so the nearby crew could hear. To him, it was just harmless fun, a way to break the rigid routine of the ship and make the morning a little brighter. He didn't expect anything unusual, certainly not the way things were about to unfold. The female officer turned to face him fully, her posture straight and calm. There was no trace of panic or surprise in her eyes, only a quiet awareness. She studied him for a brief moment, her gaze steady, almost piercing. It was the kind of look that could unsettle even the most confident sailor. The SEAL, sensing something different in her demeanor, hesitated for just a second, but the humor in him was too strong to let go. He smiled and chuckled, assuming she would play along with the joke like everyone else normally would. But instead of responding in the usual manner, she did something unexpected. Her voice was clear and steady as she spoke a string of words that sounded almost like gibberish to anyone unfamiliar with their meaning. It wasn't her rank that she said, it was a secret code, a special sequence used only in high-level Navy operations. Every syllable, every pause had a purpose. To the untrained ear, it sounded strange, perhaps even humorous, but for those trained or aware, it carried immense significance. The SEAL froze mid-smile. The laughter that had bubbled up in him vanished instantly. He had no idea she could access such sensitive information, and he realized that what he thought was a harmless joke might have just triggered something far more serious. The usual casual energy on the deck seemed to vanish in an instant, replaced by a heavy, almost tangible tension. Every crew member nearby instinctively sensed that something unusual was happening. The captain, who had been observing from a short distance, felt a chill run down his spine. The words she had spoken were not meant to be heard casually, and certainly not in front of the crew. His face went pale as he pieced together the situation. The code she spoke was tied to a classified mission, one that few on the ship even knew existed. For a split second, he could hardly breathe, realizing the gravity of the moment. The officer, calm and collected, noticed his reaction but gave nothing away. She had anticipated the need for secrecy and knew exactly how to maintain control of the situation. Meanwhile, the SEAL took a step back, his mind racing. He had been joking, testing the waters with friendly teasing, and now he found himself in unfamiliar territory. He realized the officer's calmness wasn't a sign of weakness or compliance. It was a sign of her professionalism, her training, and her extraordinary capability. She wasn't just any officer. She was someone who could handle situations most soldiers would freeze in, and she had just proven it without raising her voice or breaking a sweat. The crew, for their part, began whispering quietly among themselves. They didn't understand the exact meaning of her words, but they could sense the sudden shift in mood. The light-hearted jokes of the morning had evaporated, replaced by a feeling of seriousness and tension. Sailors straightened their backs, some exchanging uneasy glances. The calm rhythm of the ship now felt like the calm before a storm, a subtle warning that something important and potentially dangerous was unfolding right before their eyes. The female officer, aware of the attention she had drawn, took a deliberate, measured step back. Her face remained calm, almost neutral, but her eyes held a quiet intensity. She had been trained for situations exactly like this, moments when a single word, gesture, or action could carry enormous consequences. She understood that her response could change the dynamics on the ship in seconds, and she carried herself with the authority that came not from rank alone, but from skill and experience. The SEAL, realizing the seriousness, lowered his gaze slightly, feeling a mix of surprise and respect. He had joked countless times before, but never had he encountered someone who could so calmly and effectively assert their presence with nothing more than a few words. For the first time that morning, he felt the weight of discipline, intelligence, and secrecy all in one person. He knew he had underestimated her, and he silently acknowledged her strength without speaking. The captain, still pale, gestured subtly for the officer and the SEAL to follow him to a quieter area of the deck. His voice was calm, but there was urgency in his tone. He wanted to understand exactly what had just happened, why she had spoken the code, and what it meant for the ship and the mission ahead. As they moved away from the rest of the crew, the whispers and curious glances followed them, but the captain didn't care. His focus was entirely on the implications of that single, unexpected response. By now, the mood on deck had shifted completely. What had started as a casual, playful interaction had transformed into a moment charged with secrecy, tension, and the potential for high-stakes consequences. The officer walked steadily beside the SEAL, fully aware of the attention and the power of what she had done. She knew that her next actions would be closely watched, and that trust, respect, and safety could hinge on how she handled the situation from this point forward. The morning, which had begun like any other, had quietly transformed into the start of an event that would be remembered by those present. It was a subtle reminder that, aboard a Navy ship, appearances could be deceiving. Calm, routine, and laughter might hide layers of training, secrets, and courage. And in that moment, the crew unknowingly witnessed a glimpse of something far greater than a joke. A silent demonstration of authority, skill, and a command presence that demanded respect from even the most experienced sailors. The morning air, once light and filled with casual chatter, had grown tense. The female officer's unexpected response to the Navy SEAL's joke had shifted the mood aboard the ship. The words she spoke were more than just a statement. They were a secret code, known only to a handful of highly trained personnel. As the sound of her voice lingered in the air, the significance of her message began to settle in for those who could sense it. The SEAL, who had been confident moments ago, froze completely. His grin disappeared, replaced by a look of disbelief. He had expected a polite answer, maybe a laugh, something to continue the morning joke. Instead, he had been confronted with something far more serious than he could have imagined. The code she spoke was precise, deliberate, and carried a weight that immediately demanded attention. It wasn't a casual phrase. It was a message meant for situations where precision and secrecy were everything. For a moment, the SEAL couldn't even process what had just happened. He glanced around, hoping to catch a hint from someone else on the deck, but no one reacted, at least not openly. The other crew members had heard the words, but without context they seemed meaningless. Yet, even without understanding, there was a shift in the air, an unspoken recognition that this was no ordinary exchange. The light-hearted energy had vanished, replaced by tension that could almost be felt in the wind. The officer herself remained perfectly calm, her posture straight, her eyes steady. She spoke slowly, deliberately, allowing the words to have their intended effect. She had trained for years to respond under pressure, to communicate effectively in high-stakes situations, and to maintain control even when others were caught off guard. In that single moment, she demonstrated not only her knowledge, but also her ability to command respect without raising her voice or resorting to force. The captain, who had been observing from a distance, felt his pulse quicken. His face went pale, and he instinctively took a step closer, signaling that this was far beyond a simple exchange. The code she had spoken was linked to a highly sensitive mission, one that was critical to national security. He understood immediately that the implications of her words could be immense. Every syllable mattered. Every pause carried meaning. In the wrong hands, or even overheard casually, it could compromise the entire operation. The SEAL finally realized the full gravity of the situation. He had been joking, teasing, and perhaps even testing the new officer, but she had just reminded him that in the Navy, even casual moments could have serious consequences. The playful environment he was used to was not the same for her. She had responsibilities, knowledge, and skills that far surpassed his assumptions. He swallowed hard, feeling both awe and a hint of fear. He had underestimated her completely. The officer's calmness only added to the intensity of the moment. She knew that the captain's reaction was only the beginning. His concern wasn't because he doubted her, but because he understood what her words implied. She had access to information and protocols few could ever dream of knowing. The code she had spoken wasn't just a password or a signal, it was a key to operations that were classified at the highest level. Her ability to deliver it casually, without hesitation, revealed both her confidence and her deep understanding of the stakes. Around the deck, the crew whispered quietly among themselves, sensing that something extraordinary had just occurred. They didn't know the exact meaning of her words, but they could feel the shift in energy. It was as if the air itself had changed, charged with a seriousness that was rare in the usually disciplined but predictable environment of a Navy ship. Some sailors straightened instinctively, aware that they were witnessing a moment of subtle but undeniable importance. The SEAL stepped back slightly, his eyes fixed on her, trying to reconcile the person he had seen moments ago, the one he had joked with the one standing confidently before him. This was not a mere officer. This was someone with authority that went beyond rank. Her training, her composure, and her knowledge were now undeniable. For the first time that morning, he understood that he was in the presence of someone exceptional, someone whose abilities could literally change outcomes in critical moments. The captain motioned subtly for both the SEAL and the officer to follow him to a private area of the ship. His voice was calm but carried urgency. He needed to understand exactly what had happened, why she had spoken the code, and what its consequences might be. The officer followed without hesitation, her demeanor composed. She had anticipated moments like this, times when her skills and knowledge would draw attention, and when she would need to act quickly and decisively. As they walked away, the SEAL lagged slightly behind, still trying to process the events. He felt a mix of emotions: respect, surprise, and a faint tinge of fear. This was a reminder that in the Navy, appearances could be deceiving. A calm exterior did not always reveal the full story. Sometimes, the quietest individuals carried the most critical knowledge and the ability to act decisively when it mattered most. By the time they reached the captain's quarters, the mood on deck had returned to an outward semblance of normalcy, but the tension lingered invisibly. Those who had witnessed the brief exchange couldn't put their finger on what had just happened, but they felt its weight. The officer had demonstrated something extraordinary without saying much at all. A lesson in authority, competence, and the hidden layers of life aboard a Navy vessel. In that moment, the SEAL silently acknowledged her skill, and the captain understood that this officer was not ordinary. She had spoken a secret code, one that carried profound implications, and she had done so with calm confidence. It was a defining moment, a quiet but powerful reminder that in the Navy, appearances could be deceiving, and the most important capabilities were often hidden, revealed only when the time was right. The captain's face remained pale as he closed the door behind him, shutting out the soft hum of the ship and the distant chatter of the crew. Inside his quarters, the air felt heavier, almost charged with tension. The moment had passed quickly on deck, but its implications were immense. He gestured for the SEAL and the female officer to take a seat, though he remained standing, pacing slowly. His mind was racing, piecing together the situation and the unexpected revelation of her speaking the secret code. The SEAL, still a little shaken, sat silently, unsure of what to say. He had been joking minutes ago, teasing the officer casually, and now he found himself in the middle of something far more serious than he could have imagined. He couldn't help but steal glances at her, studying her calm expression. She seemed almost unaffected by the tension, her composure steady and unwavering. Every movement she made, every subtle shift in her posture, seemed deliberate, controlled, and full of confidence. The captain finally stopped pacing and turned his full attention to her. "You just spoke a code," he said carefully, trying to keep his voice calm. "A code that very few people know, and certainly not one we ever mention casually. Explain yourself." His words were measured, but there was an urgency beneath them, a recognition that what had just happened could have consequences far beyond the morning banter. The officer met his gaze without hesitation. "Yes, Captain," she said softly but firmly. I spoke the code intentionally. She didn't elaborate immediately, knowing that timing and context were critical. She understood the gravity of the situation, that every word she said needed to be precise, because even the slightest misstep could have serious consequences. Her calmness seemed to amplify the tension in the room, making the captain even more aware of the power and responsibility she carried. The captain's mind raced. Why would she speak the code in such a casual moment? Was it a test, a warning, or a mistake? He had been in the Navy long enough to know that every action had meaning, and this was no ordinary interaction. He studied her carefully, looking for any signs of hesitation, doubt, or misjudgment, but found none. Her face was serene, her eyes steady, and her demeanor entirely controlled. The realization hit him. This officer was not just highly trained. She was exceptional, someone capable of managing critical situations with composure that few could match. The SEAL, sitting nearby, swallowed hard. He realized now just how little he truly knew about her. He had assumed she was like any other officer, perhaps serious but ordinary. Now he understood that she possessed skills, knowledge, and experience far beyond what he had expected. The playful joke he had made on deck suddenly felt insignificant, almost foolish. He felt a mix of respect and awe, recognizing that he was in the presence of someone extraordinary. The officer spoke again, breaking the silence. Captain, I know the timing seems unusual, but the situation required clarity, and I ensured the code was delivered safely. I assessed the environment and the personnel present. No one could have understood or misused it, and the ship was secure. Her voice was calm, but the weight behind her words made it clear that she had considered every possible detail. She was not simply following orders. She was thinking independently, acting decisively, and taking responsibility for her actions. The captain nodded slowly, beginning to understand the depth of her training and expertise. He realized that her calmness and precise judgment were exactly what made her suitable for the high-level operations she was entrusted with. The fact that she could deliver the code casually yet safely demonstrated not only her skill but also her extraordinary presence of mind. This was someone who could operate under pressure, who could anticipate risks, and who could manage them effectively, qualities that were invaluable in the Navy. He turned his gaze to the SEAL, who now looked smaller in comparison to the gravity of the moment. You see now why this isn't a game, the captain said quietly but firmly. What you heard on deck could have been critical information. Only a few people in the Navy know this code, and the wrong person hearing it, even jokingly, could have caused a serious breach. The SEAL nodded, fully aware of the implications. He had underestimated her, underestimated the situation, and he felt a wave of humility wash over him. The officer remained composed, listening carefully, her eyes steady and focused. She understood that the captain was processing the situation, trying to reconcile the casual environment of the deck with the serious implications of her words. She didn't need to boast or justify herself aggressively. Her actions, her calmness, and her precise handling of the situation spoke louder than words ever could. For a moment, the room was silent, each person lost in their thoughts. The captain finally exhaled slowly, his posture relaxing just slightly. He realized that he had been witnessing a quiet but extraordinary display of competence and judgment. This officer was more than her rank. She was a key asset, someone whose presence could make the difference between success and failure in high-stakes missions. He understood that trust in her abilities was not optional, it was necessary. The SEAL, who had been tense the entire time, let out a soft sigh. He now understood the importance of respect, discretion, and humility in the Navy. His joke had been harmless on the surface, but it had revealed the depth of this officer's training, intelligence, and composure. He felt both embarrassed and grateful. Embarrassed for underestimating her, grateful for the lesson she had inadvertently taught him. As the captain concluded the discussion, he made it clear that this moment would remain between them, emphasizing the need for discretion. The officer nodded, understanding completely. She had delivered the code safely, maintained her composure, and now reinforced the trust and respect of the captain and SEAL alike. What had begun as a playful joke on the deck had turned into a defining moment, a silent acknowledgement of her skill, authority, and the weight of responsibility she carried every day. By the time they left the captain's quarters, the tension had eased slightly, but the impact of the moment lingered. The officer had proven her worth, the SEAL had learned a vital lesson, and the captain had gained a deeper understanding of the extraordinary capabilities hidden beneath her calm exterior. It was a morning that would not be forgotten, a subtle but unforgettable reminder of the power of discipline, skill, and the quiet strength of those who serve. The officer's calm demeanor was not by accident. It was the result of years of preparation, training, and experience that most sailors could barely imagine. Born into a family with a strong military tradition, she had been exposed to discipline and strategy from a young age. But it was not just her upbringing that shaped her. She had worked tirelessly to earn her place among the elite. While most officers focused on routine naval duties, she had undergone specialized training that pushed her to the limits of physical endurance and mental resilience. Her journey into the world of covert operations had started quietly. Early in her career, she had been selected for advanced intelligence and special operations training, a process known only to a few high-ranking officers. The training was grueling, designed to test every aspect of a person's capabilities. She had spent months learning advanced navigation, survival skills, and hand-to-hand combat. But the most important part of her training had been learning to think and react under extreme pressure. She had been placed in situations where one wrong move could mean failure or worse, danger to herself and others. Every decision she made had to be precise, measured, and effective. Over the years, she had participated in numerous missions, most of which remained classified even among the crew she served with daily. She had infiltrated hostile territories, gathered intelligence, and carried out assignments that required stealth, patience, and ingenuity. Her achievements were never publicly recognized. In the world of special operations, success was measured quietly, in mission reports and debriefings rather than applause or medals. This was a life where competence and reliability mattered far more than reputation or rank. Her presence on the current ship was part of another sensitive operation. While the crew thought she was on standard duty, she had been tasked with monitoring potential threats in international waters. Her role required secrecy, not only from potential adversaries but also from most of the crew. Only a select few, including the captain, were aware of her true mission. This was why the code she had spoken earlier had been so significant. It was not just a random string of words, but a tool to access critical information or trigger immediate responses in the event of danger. It was her responsibility to use it wisely, ensuring that the ship and its crew remained safe. The SEAL, now sitting quietly and reflecting on the morning's events, was beginning to understand the enormity of what he had witnessed. He had seen her calmness, her control, and her ability to speak a secret code with authority, but he was only now realizing the depth of her experience. This was someone who had been trained to anticipate threats, to react quickly, and to remain composed no matter the circumstances. He understood that he had been in the presence of a true professional, someone whose skills extended far beyond what was visible on the surface. The captain, watching her closely, began to piece together the context of her actions. He realized that she had spoken the code not carelessly, but strategically. Her training had taught her to assess the environment and the people present before acting. She had ensured that the message could be delivered safely, without causing alarm or compromising security. It was a delicate balance, one that required judgment, experience, and absolute confidence. As the ship continued its course through the calm waters, she quietly reflected on her responsibilities. Every day aboard this vessel carried the potential for unexpected challenges. From navigating international waters with geopolitical tensions to responding to emergencies on board, her role required vigilance and adaptability. Even the simplest interactions could have consequences if handled incorrectly. Her ability to manage these situations without drawing unnecessary attention was a testament to her training and her natural instincts. Her mind often returned to the missions she had completed in the past, where split-second decisions had determined the success or failure of operations. Those experiences had shaped her ability to remain calm under pressure, to evaluate risks quickly, and to act decisively. They had also taught her the value of trust in her training, in her team, and in her own judgment. On a Navy ship where even minor mistakes could escalate into serious problems, this trust was critical. The SEAL, now fully attentive, began to appreciate the quiet discipline she carried with her. Unlike many officers, she did not rely on rank alone to command respect. Instead, she earned it through her competence, her judgment, and her ability to act effectively when the stakes were high. He realized that the morning joke on the deck had inadvertently revealed the true measure of her capabilities. She had demonstrated, in a single moment, the kind of skill and presence that few could ever hope to achieve. The captain finally spoke, his voice calm but filled with recognition. "You've handled that with precision," he said. "Not everyone could remain so composed or manage the situation as you did. Your training, experience, and judgment are clear." The officer nodded respectfully, acknowledging his words but remaining modest. She had no need for praise. Her satisfaction came from knowing that the ship and its crew remained safe, and that she had acted correctly. In that quiet moment, the significance of her role became clear to both the SEAL and the captain. What had seemed like a casual interaction earlier was actually a glimpse into the complex and demanding responsibilities she carried every day. She was not only an officer but a highly trained operative, someone whose skills were vital to the safety and success of the mission. And while the rest of the crew remained unaware, the lessons of the morning were now etched clearly in the minds of those who had witnessed her actions firsthand. As the day continued, the officer returned to her duties with the same calm precision as before, fully aware that the next challenge could arise at any moment. For her, every interaction, every decision, and every word carried weight. And as the ship sailed steadily forward, she remained vigilant, prepared, and ready. Because in her world, excellence was not optional. It was necessary. The calm rhythm of the ship had returned after the tense exchange, but beneath the surface, a storm of thoughts and concerns was brewing. The captain, still pale from the realization of what had just happened, paced quietly in his quarters. His mind raced through worst-case scenarios and the potential consequences of the officer's unexpected revelation of the secret code. He knew that while she had handled the situation flawlessly, the risks remained. One careless move, one misinterpreted word, and everything they were working to protect could be compromised. The officer, sensing the captain's concern, remained composed. She had been trained for situations exactly like this, moments where judgment, discretion, and quick thinking could mean the difference between safety and disaster. She understood that the captain's unease was not a criticism but a reflection of the stakes involved. Her role was inherently dangerous, requiring her to constantly weigh risks, anticipate threats, and act decisively. The SEAL, sitting silently nearby, was beginning to understand the depth of what had occurred. His joke had inadvertently exposed him to the seriousness of her position and the sensitivity of the mission she was involved in. He realized that even the most casual environment aboard a ship could become a high-stakes situation. In his experience, discipline, timing, and respect for secrecy were everything, and today he had seen a perfect demonstration of both in action. The captain finally spoke, his voice steady but firm. "Your response earlier was correct," he said. "But I need to understand exactly why you chose to speak the code now. There's a very fine line between action and exposure, and I need to ensure we remain secure." The officer nodded calmly, her eyes meeting his without hesitation. She explained that she had evaluated the situation on deck, assessed the environment, and concluded that the message could be delivered safely without risk. Her decision had been immediate and precise, a reflection of her training and her ability to think clearly under pressure. As she spoke, the captain considered the broader implications. The ship was in international waters, and although there was no immediate threat, the world was unpredictable. Any sign of vulnerability could be exploited, and codes like the one she had spoken were not just words. They were keys to operations, tools for communication, and safeguards against potential enemies. Her ability to handle it correctly was impressive, but the captain knew that vigilance could never be relaxed. The SEAL, still processing the events, realized that he had a lot to learn. The officer's calm decision-making under pressure highlighted the difference between training and experience, between superficial confidence and true mastery. Her actions were a lesson in responsibility, showing how even small moments could carry enormous consequences. He felt a mix of admiration and humility, recognizing that she had turned a casual interaction into a demonstration of skill, awareness, and professionalism. Meanwhile, the officer considered the next steps carefully. She knew that the ship's safety depended on constant vigilance and strategic thinking. Every sailor, every officer, and every action on board had to be accounted for. She also understood that unexpected situations could arise at any moment, and the ability to respond quickly and accurately was essential. Her calmness was not just a personality trait, it was a survival skill, honed through countless missions where hesitation could lead to failure or danger. The captain leaned forward slightly, his hands clasped together. "We're lucky that the code was delivered safely," he said. "But the next time, even a small mistake could be disastrous. We need to make sure that the crew doesn't get involved or notice any sensitive information. Can I count on you to continue managing this quietly?" The officer nodded without a word, her expression composed but resolute. She understood the full weight of responsibility, and her mind was already anticipating potential scenarios, ready to respond with precision and caution. For the SEAL, the lesson was clear. The Navy was not just about strength, courage, or technical skill. It was about judgment, discretion, and timing. The officer's handling of the situation demonstrated all three in perfect measure. He realized that his casual approach, while harmless in most contexts, could never match the stakes of covert operations or high-level missions. Today had been a stark reminder of the difference between routine life aboard a ship and the hidden world of special operations. As the conversation continued, the captain and the officer discussed hypothetical scenarios. What could happen if the code were intercepted, how to mitigate risk, and how to ensure that the crew remained unaware of sensitive operations. Each scenario reinforced the importance of strategy, awareness, and composure. The officer's ability to think through each possibility calmly and logically impressed the captain even more. She had demonstrated not only skill but foresight, the ability to anticipate problems before they arose, a trait essential for anyone involved in covert missions. By the time the discussion concluded, the SEAL had gained a new perspective. He realized that the officer's calm response had prevented a potential crisis and had turned a risky situation into a controlled, secure outcome. The captain, too, now had a deeper understanding of her capabilities. He knew that her presence on the ship was more than an asset. It was a safeguard, a reassurance that even in high-pressure situations, someone with the right training and judgment could manage events flawlessly. As the officer returned to her duties, the SEAL watched her quietly, reflecting on the morning's events. He understood that true skill was not always visible, that calmness under pressure was a form of strength, and that judgment could often outweigh raw power. The captain observed from a distance, reassured that the officer was fully capable of handling anything that came her way. And as the ship sailed steadily onward, everyone on board, even those unaware of the full story, was unknowingly protected by her vigilance, intelligence, and quiet strength. The morning calm was shattered by the blaring of alarms echoing through the ship's corridors. Red warning lights flashed across the deck, and the familiar hum of engines was accompanied by the tense shouts of sailors rushing to their stations. Something was wrong. The SEAL immediately straightened, instinctively moving toward the control center, his mind racing with questions. But even he could sense that this was more serious than any ordinary drill or mechanical fault. The officer, who had just returned to her routine duties, immediately assessed the situation. Her calm demeanor returned, sharper than ever. Years of training had prepared her for moments like this, when a split-second decision could determine safety or disaster. Without hesitation, she moved toward the bridge, her eyes scanning the readouts, communication channels, and crew activity. She noticed subtle anomalies that others had not yet registered. A sudden electronic interference, unusual radar signals, and an odd pattern in the communication logs. The captain, already on the bridge, noticed her presence and gave a slight nod of approval. He knew that her skills would be critical in managing whatever threat was approaching. The seal, now beside her, realized how quickly she adapted to the sudden crisis. She didn't panic, didn't shout orders, but instead exuded authority and focus, guiding the crew with precise instructions and calm gestures. Her confidence was infectious. The sailors moved efficiently, following her lead without hesitation. It quickly became clear that the threat was not a simple malfunction or false alarm. A vessel of unknown origin was approaching, maintaining a stealthy distance, and sending signals that suggested possible hostile intent. The officer immediately initiated the proper protocols, using her knowledge of codes, communication patterns, and enemy tactics. She was methodical, cross-checking every piece of information, analyzing the incoming signals, and assessing the situation with the precision of someone who had trained for such scenarios countless times. The SEAL watched in awe. Moments ago, he had been joking with her on the deck. Now he saw her at her absolute best. She was a combination of intelligence, training, and intuition. Her calm presence made difficult decisions appear effortless. She coordinated between the captain, the crew, and the ship systems with a speed and accuracy that seemed almost effortless. Every command she gave was deliberate, concise, and executed immediately. The captain realized just how vital her role was. Her prior actions, the careful delivery of the secret code, the assessment of personnel and environment, had all led to this moment. Because of her vigilance, the ship was ready to respond effectively to the threat. He quietly stepped back, letting her take the lead, fully trusting her judgment and expertise. He knew that any hesitation or mistake could have dire consequences, and it was clear she would not hesitate or falter. As the approaching vessel drew nearer, the tension on the deck and bridge intensified. The crew's focus sharpened, and the officers moved quickly to implement defensive measures. The officer, relying on her training and experience, coordinated the ship's maneuvers, using calculated patterns to avoid detection while assessing the other vessel's intentions. She monitored every detail, anticipating possible moves and countering them before they became a problem. Her mind worked like a finely tuned machine, calculating options, predicting outcomes, and issuing instructions in a calm, authoritative voice. The SEAL, normally experienced in high-pressure situations himself, could not help but admire her. He realized that what he had witnessed on deck earlier, the speaking of the code, the calm response to the captain, was a reflection of the same skill and decisiveness that was now keeping the ship safe. He silently acknowledged that she was not only trained for covert operations but also for handling unexpected, high-stakes crises with flawless precision. Minutes felt like hours as the situation unfolded. The officer noticed a pattern in the approaching vessel's movements that suggested an attempt to disrupt the ship's communication systems. She quickly implemented countermeasures, rerouting signals and isolating critical channels. The SEAL assisted, but she remained the center of command, guiding every action. Her ability to process complex information while remaining calm and authoritative prevented confusion and potential chaos. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the threat was neutralized. The approaching vessel changed course, unable to breach the ship's defenses or interfere with communications. The alarms ceased, and the flashing red lights returned to their normal state. Relief washed over the crew, but it was tempered by awe and respect for the officer who had handled the crisis. Her calm, precise actions had prevented disaster and ensured the safety of everyone on board. The SEAL, catching his breath, looked at her with newfound respect. The captain, still standing on the bridge, allowed a rare smile to cross his face. He knew that her presence had made all the difference. What had begun as a routine day on the ship had turned into a real-life test of skill, judgment, and courage. And through it all, the officer had remained composed, in control, and completely effective. As the ship resumed its steady course, the crew returned to their duties, but the impression of the morning's events lingered. The officer walked quietly among them, observing, ensuring, and ready for whatever challenge might come next. Her calmness, decisiveness, and extraordinary skill had once again proven that appearances could be deceiving. What seemed like an ordinary officer was, in reality, a highly trained operative capable of handling life-or-death situations with unmatched precision and authority. The tension aboard the ship slowly began to fade as the alarm ceased and the threat passed. The crew, still a little shaken, resumed their duties with a mixture of relief and quiet admiration. No one spoke openly about the morning's events, yet there was an unspoken respect for the officer who had guided them through the crisis with such calm precision. Her actions had prevented potential disaster, but she made no grand gestures, no announcements. She moved among the crew quietly, observing, ensuring that everything was in order, her presence steady and reassuring. The captain, who had been watching her closely since the incident began, finally allowed himself a moment to speak openly. He approached her on the deck, his expression a mixture of relief, pride, and recognition. "You handled that perfectly," he said quietly, his voice carrying genuine respect. "Not everyone could remain calm under pressure, let alone coordinate a response so effectively. The ship, and everyone on it, is fortunate to have you here." She nodded slightly, accepting the praise with quiet dignity. She didn't need accolades or recognition. Her satisfaction came from knowing that the ship was safe, the crew unharmed, and the mission uncompromised. For her, the day had been another reminder of why discipline, preparation, and composure mattered more than anything else. She had spent years training for moments like this, and the success of the operation confirmed that every sacrifice, every hour of grueling work had been worthwhile. The SEAL, who had been observing from a short distance, felt a deep sense of respect and humility. He had joked with her earlier, assuming she was like any other officer. Now he realized how wrong he had been. She was more than capable, more intelligent, and more prepared than anyone aboard could have guessed. The way she had handled the threat, balancing rapid decision-making with calm authority, left a lasting impression. He silently acknowledged that he had learned a valuable lesson, not just about respecting others, but about understanding the depth of skill and responsibility that often went unseen. The captain called the key officers together for a brief meeting. Though the crew was unaware of the full details, the discussion made it clear that the morning had been a serious test of vigilance and protocol. The captain outlined how the officers' quick thinking had neutralized the threat and reinforced the importance of following proper procedures. While he did not disclose the secret code or sensitive mission details, his words conveyed respect and recognition for the officer's extraordinary abilities. The officer listened attentively, offering only the necessary clarifications. She remained professional, understanding that even in moments of recognition, discretion was essential. Her role required secrecy, not attention, and she handled it effortlessly. The captain's praise was meaningful, but it was not the focus. Her focus remained on the mission, the crew, and the countless variables that could arise at any moment. Every action she took, every decision she made, carried weight, and she had learned long ago that humility was as important as competence. As the ship sailed steadily onward, a sense of calm settled over the deck. Sailors went about their tasks with renewed energy, but with a subtle awareness that they had witnessed something extraordinary. While most of them did not fully understand the morning's events, they could sense the competence and authority of the officer who had guided them. Her calm presence, her decisiveness, and her ability to act flawlessly under pressure had left an indelible impression on everyone who had been involved. Later, when the day had passed and the sun began to set over the horizon, painting the ocean in shades of gold and orange, the officer stood quietly on the deck, looking out at the endless water. She reflected on the events of the day, the joke on the deck, the code, the sudden threat, and the successful resolution. For her, it was a reminder that life in the Navy was unpredictable. Calm could shift to crisis in seconds, and the difference between safety and danger often came down to preparedness, skill, and quick thinking. She knew that her training and experience had been tested once again, and the outcome reinforced the importance of vigilance and discipline. The SEAL approached her quietly, his respect evident in his eyes. "I misjudged you this morning," he admitted softly. "I had no idea what you were capable of. You handled everything flawlessly." She smiled faintly, appreciating the sincerity, but said nothing more. Words were unnecessary. Her actions had already spoken louder than any praise could. The captain, standing nearby, observed the interaction with a quiet sense of satisfaction. He knew that the ship had been in good hands throughout the crisis. He also knew that this officer was not only capable but essential. A reminder that true leadership, courage, and competence often went unseen until the moment they were needed most. Her calm, decisive actions had ensured that the morning's events ended without harm, and in doing so, she had earned the trust and respect of those who mattered most. As night fell, the ship moved steadily forward, cutting through the calm waters under a sky full of stars. The officer returned to her duties with the same quiet efficiency she had shown all day, ready for whatever challenges might come next. The SEAL, the captain, and the crew now carried a subtle but lasting awareness of her extraordinary abilities. They understood, even if they did not fully see, that she had the skills, judgment, and courage to handle any crisis. By the end of the day, it was clear that what had started as a simple joke on deck had evolved into a profound demonstration of skill, discipline, and composure. The officer had spoken a secret code, navigated the captain's concern, and managed a real-life threat with precision and confidence. In doing so, she had proven that true strength was not loud or showy. It was calm, deliberate, and unwavering, visible only when it mattered most. The ship sailed on, the crew's confidence restored, and the officer remained a silent guardian, a reminder that in the Navy, appearances could be deceiving, and that the quietest individuals often held the greatest power to influence events. Her day had been extraordinary, not because of accolades or recognition, but because she had fulfilled her duty flawlessly, earning the trust, respect, and admiration of those around her.